House of Consciousness presents, yes, Brother Shlama. Brother Shlama has been in the community for years doing extensive research. Brother Shlama has been a House of Consciousness supporter since day one. Peace and blessings to my brother Shlama.
Full name is Nasikh Shlama Ibn Abner bin YisraEL, and I characterize myself as a Moor of Hebrew Israelite descent. By that I mean that at the time of our captivity, the Moorish Empire was in the ascendance. It was still in the ascendance, and as that, I felt that I was a part of the Moorish Empire when they came over to get us and enslave us. Now, I'm not going to say that all of us are Hebrew Israelites, but from how I was trained, most of us are, and that there's different aspects of this captivity that needs to be brought out that can be of benefit to us all. I recall Dr. Ben once saying, which was two things that really got me started on doing research and on trying to do lectures. One thing was Dr. Ben said that the Hebrew Israelites have a lot of information that could help the community, but they seem to just stay back with it. And what started me really to doing research and to try to lecture on this subject was Sister Adelaide Sanford did a lecture one time, and Adelaide Sanford said, "Oh, she did a background check on her family and found out she was from the Igbo tribe." Yes. So I had approached Sister Adelaide Sanford and I said, "Do you know the Igbo tribes are Hebrews?" She said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You can prove that?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You need to start doing research and bring this out and try to bring the information, get me the information also." So that's what started me to really searching. And one of the main books I started with was From Babylon to Timbuktu, because once I started going into this book seriously, and then from this book, first it was the Bible for me, and then I wanted to try to prove whether what was in the Bible was true or not. Right. So I started doing outside research. Right. And with this book, I found that most of everything he said in here was true, because I took this as a historical source and I went to other things outside, and it was corroborating not only the details of some of what he said was true. I corroborated through oral history of the Africans that were over here. I had an African nurse. I worked for Manhattan Psychiatric Center, and I had an African nurse who told me where she was from in West Africa. And I said, "You know, the Hebrews, there were some Hebrews down by there." And she said, "Yeah, that's right." She says, "We come from the, what is that, the Kandong state or something like that. It's in here." And I said, "Well, that's right in here." So
who wrote that book?
Dr. Rudolph Windsor, Professor Dr. Rudolph Windsor. And not only the name of the book is From Babylon to Timbuktu, A History of Ancient Black Races, Including the Black Hebrews.
I saw that book before.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's an essential book for all of us to have, simply because he goes into the history of Kemet, of Cush, and of parts of the Middle East. And he without doubt or contradiction, says that they were black, and then he goes on to show his sources. Okay. And what I found out through my years, and I've been doing this for almost close to 27, 28 years. Right?
All right. What I would like for you to do, Brother Shlama, in your bringing forth information, is somehow connect the dots with Kemet, the Moors, and the ancient Hebrew Israelites. Connect the dots. Bring it all home together in this whole
In this whole thing, okay.
All right.
There's
You can finish doing what you
Okay.
do. Just lead up to it as you go
right.
on.
Well,
Keep doing what you've been doing.
in here, he talks about the origins of the different races also, and he starts out with the ancient black civilizations, and then he goes into origin of the white race. But now his base, you have to understand, him being an Hebrew Israelite, is the Bible. So he's taking what's in the Bible, like say from when they talk about Noah, when they talk about the three sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and he says, well, the Shemites were the black people who were like in Western Asia, and then he says that the Hamites were the Egyptians, Ethiopians, going all the way down into India. And then he says the Japhites were originally black, but then somehow they turned white. So now you have to qualify that, right? Right, because you can't just take it off the top like that.
Right.
So how did I come to say that it's true for me? Is that when I was in college in Long Island University, right? I took up anthropology class. And in the anthropology class, when they was going up into Europe and they were digging down in different layers, one of the prime layers to go in all the way down, right? They go to Neanderthal, the Cro-Magnon, and all that. They found a layer down called the Grimaldi man.
I'm familiar.
Yes, and the Grimaldi man was a black man because they could verify that by his what they call that, phrenology, by the shape of the skull, right?
Grimaldis.
So Grimaldis were the oldest of those
Of Europe.
of Europe.
Right.
So this is why I said, okay, Japhet was black, but then what happened to turn them white? And
That's a good question.
the only way I know to explain it is genetics and the adaptation to where they were at. And I guess most of the true scientists that looked through these things, they said that it had to be through adaptation and through mutation.
All right, briefly go through the rest of the books. Just,
Okay.
Name some of the other books
All
you got
right.
there.
I brought From Babylon to Timbuktu, of course, and then I also brought, in terms of just staying within the Israelite vein right here, I brought Jews and Judaism in African History
By Richard.
by Richard Hall.
By Richard Hall.
I brought also this book, The Chosen People from the Caucasus, and this is by Michael Bradley. And in here, he goes into the fact that the European Jew is not the true Jew, and that he's merely a Caucasian and part of the Caucasoid family, and that his behavioral tendencies and his psychology is the same as the other Caucasoids, that he was highly aggressive. And that he also shows in this book too, that in the Bible they talk about the birth of Jacob and Esau, and that the commentators in of the Bible said that Esau was really the Caucasian in his caveman thing. Also to corroborate, to corroborate a number of things that was said about the Caucasian and what happened, what he did when he came down into the East, and who he was The Making of the White Man by Paul Laurence Guthrie. In there, he talks about the Caucasus Mountains. He talks about the gates that were set up. He talks about how became an alliance in the East, an agreement among them to keep the Caucasian out, because when they let him down in there, he caused a lot of mischief. Now, he charts this, he documents this through the history that was in, through the old history of the Iranians, and some of the old history that was in Iraq, which is Babylon. Iraq is Babylon, and Iran is Persia. Those old names. So, in there, also another book that goes specifically into is the Iceman's Inheritance. Michael Bradley. Because if you don't understand his history, you don't understand his psychology. Dr. Amos Wilson once pointed out that you will not find the Caucasian's history in history. You won't find the Caucasian psychology in psychology. You have to find his psychology in history. He never will put his psychology in psychology. I went to school for psychology, for psychotherapy. So I know what he says is true. He's not going to give you his psychology in his psychology. That's just not possible. But if you go through his history, it's in his psychology is there, and it's different from everybody else's psychology, which Michael Bradley points out that why is he so different from everyone else? You understand? And in all this, I find you can find a line of history and reality through the Bible. Now, you have to realize that you have to take on a perspective of the Bible as a history book and not as a religious book. And when I was growing up, a black rabbi by the name of Rabbi Woods told me, he said, Shlama, the Bible is not a Western book, it's a book of the East. And in order for you to understand it, you have to understand the context of the East. You even have to read Eastern philosophy and then reapply it to what's in the Bible. Otherwise, you can't use Western psychology for an Eastern book. So you got to know Eastern history in order to this. And African history is a must, because it is actually an African book.
So through all your research and study, can you show and prove? Because I know you hear all the talk when they say Jesus was never real. Jesus is not a man that ever walked the face of the earth. That's a myth. Can you show and prove today that Jesus is real? That Jesus was a man that actually walked the face of the planet Earth?
I can't show and prove, but I can tell you that
whatever name he went by.
Oh, well, his name wasn't Jesus.
All right, there you can see that.
Oh, no, his name was Joshua. Joshua ben Yosef, or some people say that his name was Yahshua Pandera, meaning that Yahshua and his totem was the panther, right? But I know him as Yahshua ben Yosef, the son of Yosef, right? And that in certain of the Roman chronicles, they have in there his trial. I used to have a book that came from the. It's a Masonic order that was based in Rome, and they had the records of the trial of him. I can't remember. They'll come back to me with it, but it was. I used to have the little book, and it's out of Italy. This Masonic order came out of Rome, and in there they had the trial of him. So, for me, that was a proof enough that he did exist, and that some of the things that was placed in the New Testament was kind of rearranged, because Professor Barashango had wrote a book about the Bible. It was a big Bible, and in there he gave historical facts on how the New Testament was put together, and that this rich shipbuilder put most of the Gospels together in order to make it look favorable for the Europeans. Because at that time, right, before Christianity took root, the Roman Empire was falling. So they needed something to unify it. So they chose Christianity. It wasn't called that in the beginning.
Okay.
But in the Bible, it tells you that, like in the Gospels, it tells you about when I think, who was it? One of them wanted to go among the Gentiles, and it says that in the Hebrew said we don't have no dealings with the Gentiles. And then Peter had a dream, right?
Yeah.
And in Peter's dream, he saw all these different animals and stuff like that. But just before Peter went to sleep, he was hungry. So he fell asleep on this roof, and he had this dream about all these different kind of animals and somebody and all that. And it said, and the voice of God said, "Slay Peter and eat." And Peter said, "I never put no unclean thing in my body." So when he woke up, he couldn't understand the dream. He was confused. And then he went to Cornelius, this guy named Cornelius, went to his house and found Europeans mixing with black Hebrews and all that. And he said, "I don't understand this." So he says, then he understood the dream, that they were supposed to use the European in order to try to get back the kingdom. And I mean, we're going into the Bible there, but if you read Romans, the book of Romans, from the 9th chapter to the 11th chapter, it lays out the plan. Because in there they say that those who were coming into this way of life of the Hebrews were only branches that were grafted on. But the root is always going to be the same. That was slick talk.
Right.
It was real slick talk.
Do you know how the Bible was created, how the Bible was formed? Because at the time, it wasn't called Bible.
No, it was called, we called it the Torah.
The Torah?
Yeah, it's Torah in Hebrew. They try to tell you that it means the 5 books. But how can 5 books come out of one word? Torah means the way. It's just like, this is the way that you should walk. So the Bible was formed over a period of time. It wasn't like they had Moses, who said it was the 5 books, but Moses, remember, spent a lot of time in Kemet.
Okay.
You see, and so a lot of what you see in the Bible, that's why it doesn't make sense to just outright down the Bible and then promote Kemet. Well, how you going to promote Kemet and don't promote Israel? You understand? So here's the thing: if Kemet is the cornerstone, and it is the cornerstone,
Right.
if we took Kemet back, how are we not going to take Canaan back? You understand? You can't, because they were connected. And if you in the Bible, see, some people don't bring this part out. The Bible, Canaan, or what they call Israel now, and Kemet were always connected, because that was one of the the zones of influence of Kemet.
Well, Shlama,
Yeah.
if ancient Egypt, Kemet, was the origin, if it's the root, and I know you know that it's the root,
Yes.
then why wouldn't you get the knowledge from the root instead of from a Johnny come lately like the Bible? Because all the knowledge that's in the Bible come out of, not all, I would say most of it come out of ancient Kemet. So why wouldn't you
Okay.
go directly to the source for your information?
Well, we didn't have access to the source.
You get access to it now.
Yeah, but in the way we're still reconstructing Kemet. When Israel got it, Let me say how you say it. I'm gonna say it the way it was refined. It was refined. You understand? Because it was refined, and then even before we went into Canaan, there were certain laws that we refined because we had a chance to see the cause and effect of certain actions. And we also realized that in Kemet had started to get corrupt too. And the priests were starting to trick the people. So with that, I mean, some of the essential laws and some of the central moral teachings that was in Kemet, we brought out with us. Now the controversy comes, I think, politically, when you get the true house of Israel mixed up with the impostors. Because the Jews have had a lot of this information for so long, and they put their face on it. So sometimes when you think of Israel, you don't think of yourself. You think of them. But the moral teachings in the Torah and the certain ways of life that's in there is beneficial to us. Because it helped bring, hey, listen, it brought the European from his uncivilized, savage state up.
Now, hold up, brother.
Incest and all that.
When you say the doctrine, the teachings, the Bible, have brought the Europeans from
Even us.
brother, they killed our people in the name of their Bible. They killed our people in the name of Christianity.
Yes.
Because when you look at the pictures right there, they burned crosses on your loin.
Yeah.
So when you say that it cleaned them up, I don't see that. Can you show and prove to me where religion have cleaned up the Caucasian?
I wouldn't say religion, I would say spiritual teachings. You understand? Because the Bible is not a religious book. It's a book that deals with statutes, laws, and judgments, and spiritual teachings. Now, religion comes in. The only reason why we call it religion now is because the nation and the way of life was conquered. So the only way that we could keep the nation and the way of life together is that we had to form it as a religion. That's the only way they would deal with it.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would have been wiped out completely, just like in Kemet. The only way that the Kemetic way of life was able to survive itself was that they had to bring it up under those mystery schools or mystery teachings. And even with that, Justinian, I think it was, he closed down that. You see?
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
In regards to the Bible and black people in America, would you say that the Caucasian used the Bible to give his slaves religion instead of spirituality, which from what I'm understanding, listening to you, that was its true intention, to give you spirituality. And the Caucasian used it to give you religion, which is a doctrine of submission and requires blind obedience.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, that's what he did. But that happened after a conditioning. Mm-hmm. We didn't just come over here like that. As a matter of fact, in one of these books, Fighting Slavery, Fighting the Slave Trade, they tell you that
They tell you what?
That they wouldn't even, sometimes they wouldn't even bring you, like once the slave trade, first of all, the slave trade did not begin from Africa to the Americas. The first slave trade, they first started in early 1400s, 1401 or something like that, when the Portuguese got a license, an exclusive license called the Asiento, to import slaves up into Western Europe, which means up into Portugal and those places like that. And then later on, another Asiento was given where they could import slaves here to the United States. But they wouldn't import slaves directly to the United States because of what happened within the Moorish Empire. So those slaves that was imported directly from, like, say, West Africa straight to the United States, and like over in to all the Spanish holdings, like Peru and all those different places like that, Chile and all those slaves was uprising. So they said, no, we can't import them straight. We got to bring them through a conditioning first. And then, of course, they took your children and took them away from their culture and their spiritual way, and then brought them up in this phony Christianity,
Right.
which is not true Christianity.
Right.
Yeah, but they only use that as a mechanism for control on our people. For them, it helped them to bind themselves into a unified group. Because remember before what's that, 325? That was the Nicene Council.
Mm-hmm.
Before
Constantine.
that, the Constantine brought them unified and brought them under Christianity.
Right. Right.
Before that, they were breaking up.
Right.
You see, and not long after that, the fall of the Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire happened. But they didn't use Christianity in the way that it was supposed to be intended.
But now, when we say they didn't use Christianity in the way it was intended, at what point did they start calling it Christianity? What's the date? Was it 325?
That they started calling it that?
Yeah, start calling it Christianity. Because see, we use the term Christianity, and I think we need to start using the original identifications. Because when we say Christianity, people will go off on a tangent thinking that,
out of conditioning.
T.D. Jakes and Creflo Dollar and all these other clowns is preaching Christianity, when in actuality it's not.
Well, actually, what they call early Christianity was really the Hebrew way of life. Was what the laws and the way of life of the Old Testament. Because Joshua was a Hebrew from the tribe of Judah, and his family, and they celebrated in the same way that the Hebrews celebrated. Right? It wasn't until Paul, what they call Paul, he began to teach a different teaching. And it wasn't called Christianity, they called it the Nazarene movement or something else like, but they didn't call it that. Or they called it some kind of Hebrew what they call the Zealots, and all, they call them all these different kind of movements.
How do you make your connection with the Hebrews and the Moors? Now we still gonna deal with the slavery too. Okay. With the Hebrews and the Moors, how do you make that connection first?
The Moors is a overarching term, and under the.
And when I say Moors, I'm talking about the historical Moors. I'm not talking about no Israeli Moors.
No, I'm talking about.
You can bring that in later on.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, the historical Moors was a overarching term that had other nations in it, and the Hebrew nations is one of the main nations that were part of the Moorish Empire. When I use Moors now, I'm going to use it as a term of empire.
Okay.
Right, not as a term as